All right, there's breaking news coming in. Let's take you live straight across to Chandigarh, where French President Francois Hollande has arrived in the city for his 3-day state visit to India. Terror crackdown has begun ahead of the French president's visit. Well, these are live images coming to you from Chandigarh. Just a short while ago, the French president arrived in the city. Here he is greeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Chandigarh. Well, the atmosphere surrounding the visit and his choice of starting his visit in Chandigarh is because of a series of business agreements and the focus on smart cities in the country. Chandigarh happens to be one of those. But it's also an atmosphere of terror. Only a few months after the dastardly attacks in France, terror continues to be the overarching sentiment internationally as the French president arrives in the country with maximum security. 14 people, remember, have been arrested in India and 4 more detained by India's federal investigation agencies for links with the Islamic State, which claimed responsibility for the Paris attacks late last year. Francois Hollande, the French president, is in the country to be India's chief guest at the Republic Day parade on Tuesday. These are live images of the Guard of Honor and other ceremonies that will play out for the French president as he is escorted through several parts of Chandigarh. There is maximum security for the two world leaders as they exchange pleasantries and discuss this escort through the city of Chandigarh. The famous rock garden in Chandigarh is where the Prime Minister and the French president are currently at. These are images. Media largely restricted to camera persons allowed anywhere close to the two world leaders. As you can imagine, there is already a high threat perception on both of these leaders. The French president, whose country is currently waging an aerial war against the Islamic State in Syria, and the Indian Prime Minister, against whom a threat perception was made explicit just a couple of days ago. Both world leaders currently on the terror target. Leaders now walking together at Chandigarh's Rock Temple before discussions begin. Let's go straight across to India. Today's Manjeet Sehgal for more on this. Manjeet, the French president is in the country. Take us through what we're seeing now. What's happening right now?
French President Hollande began his 3-day India visit from here at Chandigarh. Prime Minister Narendra Modi received him here at the Rock Garden. Now both are taking a walk around the Rock Garden, which was constructed by the Chand. They will be spending here 15 minutes, and after visiting the Rock Garden, they are heading to the Capitol complex, which is considered as one of the finest examples of architecture created by.
And what are we expecting to see in terms of discussions today, Manjeet? All right, we've lost that audio link with Manjeet, but just to put these images into context for you, the French president is India's Republic Day chief guest. He will be meeting India's top CEOs in a short while from now. He's on a 3-day visit that began just a few hours ago. It's his first visit in the last 2 years. This is by no means the French president's first visit to the country. Let's go across to Deputy Editor, Foreign Affairs, Smita Sharma, for more as well. Smita, put this into context for us. A lot of people will be wondering why the French president has begun his visit by landing in Chandigarh. Just break that down for us.
Well, Chandigarh, which is considered to be one of the top smart cities for the 21st century, was designed actually by the Swiss-born but legendary French architect, city planner Le Corbusier. And remember, this is also the 50th anniversary of the planner, which is the reason why the French President Hollande had actually sort of requested the Indian government if he could kickstart his visit. When of course you have a visiting dignitary coming in, there is a series of requests that can be sent in from the dignitary side as well. And then the Indian Indian government takes up on it. Also remember, Shiv, for the Narendra Modi government, all the visits of foreign leaders have not essentially been limited only to the national capital. We saw Narendra Modi actually sort of reciprocate all the visits to places other than the capitals where he has gone on foreign tours with the foreign leaders when they have come back to India. So Xi Jinping was in another city in Gujarat. Shinzo Abe, Japanese PM, was in Varanasi recently. And now the French president, who returns for his second official visit to India since 2013, he is kick-starting it from Chandigarh, where Narendra Modi personally is giving him a tour of Rock Garden. But the focus here will also be largely on business-to-business agreements, because government-to-government comes down when these two leaders hold summit talks in a few hours from now. In fact, tomorrow afternoon, really, in Delhi's Hyderabad house. There are some 25 top CEOs as part of this delegation who will be sitting down for the India-France CEOs Forum. But colourful visuals there, Shiv. At the airport, we saw the Bienvenue posters welcoming Hollande in French, really, even as there were colourful Bhangra performers dancing to the tunes of dhols. I'm being told that even Rock Garden, one can actually see a lot of French notices and posters put up everywhere, along with the English markings, one clearly to make Mr. Hollande as comfortable as possible.
Absolutely. Those posters, highly anticipated visit, given the global attention on the French president, who was chosen as the Republic Day guest this year. All eyes are going to be on that parade that takes place on Tuesday, Smitha. In fact, you'll be there covering that event, that annual event as well. Also, at this point of time, Smitha, before I come back to you, let me get in a word from Manjeet Sehgal, our correspondent who's on the ground in Chandigarh. Manjeet, fantastic images of the two world leaders, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the French President, walking together, having a bit of a chat at the Rock Garden. Take us through what's happening right now, Manjeet.
Yes, Shiv, French President Francois Hollande arrived here at Chandigarh a short while ago. He was received by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who had arrived here in advance. Both are taking a walk around the Rock Garden, which was constructed by Nek Chand. They'll be spending here 15 minutes, and after spending 15 minutes, they'll be heading to the Capitol complex, which is considered as one of the finest examples of architecture created by Le Corbusier. They'll be spending another 15 minutes there, and after visiting the Capitol complex, they'll be heading to the State Museum, and they again spend another 15 minutes there, and after visiting the museum, they'll be heading to the Taj Hotel, where Indo-France summit is going on. They'll be attending the summit. So this is the 3-day visit of President Hollande, which began here at Chandigarh. And during their visit, they are also expected to sign a bilateral agreement to develop Chandigarh, Puducherry and Nagpur as the smart cities, Shiv.
Absolutely. The smart city focus is going to be very, very important, Smitha. Smart cities is something that the Prime Minister has harped on quite frequently ever since he took office in 2014. Chandigarh, Puducherry, there's a big blueprint as far as other cities are concerned. What kind of role is France really going to play in that, Smitha?
As far as the smart city projects are concerned, let's remember, Shiv, that this is something that was also initiated on the UPA government's time. And that was also a time when we saw, states like West Bengal actually enter into these twin city projects that it was then known with, say, a country like China. So similarly, France picking up on these three cities of Chandigarh, Nagpur, Pondicherry. Now, globally, there still seems to be a confusion in terms of how to really define a smart city, because there is no standard definition at the moment. But there are, yes, a couple of parameters in terms of transportation, in terms of clean air, in terms of the smartness, that makes life comfortable for people, and also that has a larger blueprint. 50 years down the line, when the city's population is growing, will the city still be able to sustain itself, be able to cater to the needs of a much, in fact, grown-up population?
Yeah.
These are all the considerations that France, of course, is a green superpower. It has a large reserve, of course, of nuclear clean technology. That is something India has been working with France on. India needs to cut down its carbon emissions, needs green technology. So all of these become a part of it, and also France, in fact, undertaking a study for a possible high-speed railways between Delhi and Chandigarh that makes this Hollande visit to Chandigarh all the more very interesting.
Going to be very, very interesting to see those big deals that are actually going to be signed. Well, President Hollande is on a visit, like Smita and Manjeet just pointed out, on a 3-day visit to India. He landed in Chandigarh at about 1 p.m. and as you can see in these pictures, he's visiting the rock garden in the city where Prime Minister Modi is personally escorting him. The two leaders will also visit other key landmarks like the Capitol complex and an art gallery later. High security is in place in the city where the two leaders will also meet CEOs of top companies. This will be followed by an India-France business summit later today. By evening, the French president, who is accompanied by a high-level delegation, will be leaving for Delhi. One of the biggest attractions of the Hollande visit will be on Tuesday, when he will be chief guest at India's famous Republic Day parade. He will also hold talks, of course, with Prime Minister Modi, expected to be focused on a high-value jet deal for Rafale fighter aircraft and counter-terror cooperation in the aftermath of the Paris and Pathankot terror strikes. Smita, specifically on the deal for Rafale fighter aircraft, it's a deal which has, been on the threshold of being approved for a very long time now. When the Indian Prime Minister was in Paris last year, he, provided indication that this deal was going to happen. India was on the verge of, signing up for 36 Rafale fighter jets that are made in France. But it appears that that deal may not be signed during the French president's visit.
Shiv, before the Rafale, actually, if you remember, 2012-13 was when India started planning to buy actually 126 those medium multi-role combat aircrafts, and that came across, that splashed across news stations across the world, because that was supposed to be one of the biggest, in fact, aircraft deals since the 1990s. That was the point when these negotiations had begun, but that was scrapped off. That couldn't go through. Now, of these Rafale deals too, in April of last year, when Narendra Modi did visit France, of course, on an official visit, that is when he announced that 36, of course, will be bought off the shelf. But clearly for India, which is also focusing on defense co-production under the Make in India banner, to try and get in transfer of technology as well on these deals, what the governments are going to do is, remember the commercial, in fact, dealings that collapsed with Dassault Aviation's, the company that was handling this. So which is when the government said, let's go in for government-to-government negotiations at this point. So what we are going to see is an intergovernmental agreement that will be signed on. That will be a protocol agreement where the governments will say that, look, technically, in principle, we have agreed to buying this deal, but it is coming, the cost is almost through 60,000 crores. It's almost $10 billion. The prices have escalated since the time the original negotiations began. So that price negotiation, the production negotiation, they still seem to be sticky points. That's why we will perhaps have the intergovernmental agreement, but not a commercial contract come through at the moment, something which Hollande also said in an interview this morning, where he said that the deal seems to be right on track, but technicalities can be very complex and need to be worked out.
All right, this is a very significant piece of breaking news that Smita is bringing to us here as part of this news break on the Rafale deal. Smita, I'm going to chat with you a little bit more about this. The Rafale deal, remember, as Smita just explained, the Indian Air Force has been counting on the Indian government signing up with the French government for 36 Rafale fighter aircraft. Those are the aircraft you can see in those pictures. These are fighter jets that are currently engaged in a war against the ISIS. They've had a war experience in Libya and Afghanistan as well. And these are aircraft that India is on the verge of buying. There had been speculation that a deal was likely to be signed with the French president in India. But as Smita is reporting first and exclusive here on India Today, the deal is likely not to be concluded, at least during this visit. It might happen at a later date. So that might be a bit of a minor disappointment for the Indian Air Force, but the deal is still very much on the table, Smita.
Absolutely, as I said, because once you have a government to government, there are not too many aircrafts. Shiv, you cover the defense ministry, and
yes,
there are not too many defense acquisitions where the government comes in directly at such an intervention level. Normally, these are left to the companies that go into the manufacture of these weapons. India, which has been looking to, of course, to replace its aging MiG-21, the entire fleet,
yes,
which are non-upgraded, with, of course, these fighter aircrafts, even as it wants to go in for more production of the fifth generation advanced aircrafts. It's come up with a Tejas. For the longest time, India has been indigenously building a Tejas, which finally now is actually participating in an air show in Bahrain after so many years of delay. So it's in India's, of course, interest in terms of its security that it upgrade its fleet. But of course, a government agreement to be signed in principle to show as a face saver. A commercial contract still looks very unlikely unless Narendra Modi is able to pull some bunny out of his hat here.
This is turning out to be one of the most elusive defense contracts, in the history of Indian defense contracting. This is a deal that has meandered for over a decade. In fact, it's meandered since the post-Kargil war era. So about 15 to 16 years is how long the Indian Air Force has made abortive attempt after abortive attempt to induct new fighter aircraft and has failed miserably. The Rafale was chosen in 2011-2012 as a fighter in a competition between 6 fighters as part of a deal called the mother of all defense deals, called the Medium Multi-Role Combat Aircraft Program, after which it was deemed that the deal couldn't go through as a result of high cost. But it was a face saver of sorts when Prime Minister Modi in Paris last year announced that India would pursue a purchase of 36 fighter jets. But it now appears, as Smita is reporting, that there will be another face saver. The deal will not be concluded or signed, but an intergovernmental agreement binding the two countries to such a purchase will happen when the French president is in Delhi. We're going to have a look out on that. But that's big news. Let's keep this very much in context. Smita, you cover foreign affairs. Defense deals, which are always of very, very high value, are extremely important diplomatically because they function as sweeteners as far as the economic relationship and the strategic relationship between countries are concerned. And that's why there is so much importance being given to a deal like the Rafale.
Absolutely. And for a country like India, which has a huge, in fact, arms purchase market shift, the Russians, of course, must be smiling at the moment because at the end of the day, for the go-tos for Indians always inevitably turns out to be the Russians, despite, of course, all the delays in some of their projects too, like the nuclear submarines.
Yes.
Last year, we saw Narendra Modi, in fact, in an unprecedented sort of a move, invite Barack Obama, the US president, as the chief guest on Republic Day. And it made for such interesting visuals where Barack Obama witnessed the Republic Day parade with the most of India's equipment actually being Russian purchases being paraded down, Rajpath. So for the French president too, look, it is a very broad and a deep relationship at the end of the day. There are too many sectors where India and France are cooperating. So even if the Rafale deal conclusion doesn't happen, there is still that counter-terror cooperation, that's a cooperation between the two armies, joint military exercises that have been on Operation Shakti since 2011. There's a first recently held maritime dialogue keeping in mind the vital interests of both these countries in the Indian Ocean. Climate change, another very, very crucial sector, given the kind of role that India played and Narendra Modi personally played in making sure that climate justice was actually a part of the larger climate change conference agreed upon at the COP21 summit in Paris. Both these countries face grave terror threats from ISIS to other, of course, terror organizations. So there is a lot really for the two to gain from each other. But yes, if the Rafale deal finally comes through, it will definitely be the icing on the cake.
Absolutely, icing on the cake, and a very high value icing on the cake, if I may use that phrase. Smita, thanks only for the moment. We're slipping into a short break. Our coverage continues from Chandigarh and from Delhi. We've got several eyes. All of our reporters are on this big story, the high-level visit of the French president to India. The 3-day visit has begun. We'll be getting you minute-by-minute updates from Chandigarh and Delhi on everything that happens. That's Prime Minister Modi and the French president taking a stroll outside the rock garden in Chandigarh.